Bible and History. I'm Jeff Johnson, and with me today is my mother, Rebecca Johnson. And today we're going to be talking, finishing up the flood, going on into the post-flood world, and getting into some actual history here.
Yes.
Not that the pre-flood wasn't actual history, but
Right.
more documented history. So I'm going to begin reading Genesis 8, verses 3 through 5 to kind of finish out the flood here. And the waters returned from off the earth continually, and after the end of the 150 days, the waters were abated. And the ark rested in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, upon the mountains of Ararat. And the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, were the tops of the mountains seen.
Yes, so I like this part of history because now we're really getting somewhere. We're going to be able to start doing comparison histories. Not quite yet. We're getting there though. We have to end the flood. And again, if you have doubts about the flood, if you're curious about the flood and want more information, please go to answersingenesis.com. They have so much information available for you there, or visit the Ark Encounter or the Creation Museum.
Yeah.
So the flood has ended, and so I want to talk about where the ark landed. This is something that is kind of humorous to me in the way people misread the scriptures. Okay. There have been expeditions into Turkey when it talks about the mountains, plural guys, of Ararat. The mountain range where Mount Ararat is, the mountains of Ararat, is in eastern Turkey, okay? And it is really kind of interesting to me, a couple of things that happened right here at the end of the flood. So you have the flood is over. Again, we had talked about how God shut the door. Again, God opens the door.
Yep.
So when God shuts a door, quit kicking on it. You're not going to open it. And when God opens a door, it's open. Run. That's where you need to be. And so God opens the door. There's the sacrifice. God sends the rainbow, which, by the way, the rainbow is God's.
Yeah.
Roy G. Biv, it's God's. When they add a pink strip on the bottom, that's the homosexual rainbow. We do not support that, but God brought that rainbow as a promise that he would never destroy the earth completely with a flood. He didn't say he wasn't going to destroy it eventually, but that it wouldn't be with a flood. So, where did this ark land? Well, there's been all these expeditions on Mount Ararat. Huge problem with that. Mount Ararat would have been either a forming or active volcano at this moment. If God had dropped him on if God had dropped him onto Mount Ararat, he would have burned up, okay? It was either in the process of forming or an active volcano at this moment. So guess what? It ain't there. So it was in the mountains of Ararat. So somewhere in the mountain range. The mountains of Ararat actually are on the borders of Turkey, Armenia, and Iran today. So it could have been anywhere along the mountain range
of mountains that the ark could have landed on. So trying to find it's not as easy as looking at a single mountain. And even saying that, trying to find it, go off on a little personal theory. I don't personally believe that we can find the ark today. It is my belief, and I think my mother's with me, that the ark was disassembled.
Yes, I totally agree.
You got to think. They've lived on this ark. Everything's been destroyed. There's no kind of structures. There's no kind of anything. And they come off the ark. They have to have somewhere to live. They got to build houses. They got to build farms and different things like this. And so they're looking for wood. They might have had tools on, or they probably had tools on the ark, but
I'm sure they had tools.
why take the time to cut down trees that have, well, not been grown, you know? Everything's been ripped up. There might be trees laying around or whatever, but then you'd have to still go through and saw them and make them into boards. When you could just take apart the ark and use that to build your house.
Right.
You know, you just saw those to the proper size, bam, you've got a prefab house, you're good to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't think there's any evidences of the ark anymore. It was all essentially recycled because there's no resources for them to gather anymore or easily.
Right.
There's no trees for them to cut down, nothing like that. So they had to do something. And I think they used the ark. Kind of just reuse that as they were rebuilding.
Totally agree with you on that. It makes so much sense to just use what you have easily available. The tree growth, while it would have been there, would not have been to the point that the trees were even useful in building a home. And
at the
you
very
have
most, they would have been
4
saplings.
families that need to build, you know. So I absolutely would agree with you. I also, for another reason, think the ark would not still be there because I believe very quickly it would have turned into an idol.
Yep.
And a place of worship. And for that reason as well, I believe God would have just encouraged them to dismantle it as quickly as possible. Humans have a habit of idolizing things that never should have been idolized in the first place.
Very true.
Now, just because there was a flood, just because the bulk of humanity, down to 8 people, has been wiped out, doesn't mean that intelligence was destroyed. I believe, this is my opinion, that the ark had books, manuscripts, it had information, it had a lot of technology that we're not aware of that came off that ark. But you have to remember, the earth is completely different. Whether you have chosen to believe in the Pangea theory as in a completely different looking continent, or, you know, in the continents but with less of a, where they're more intimately connected, it doesn't matter. Everything has changed. And so the process of finding the right metals again and the right combination of alloys to bring together to create something, this takes time because now you have to research. It doesn't mean they didn't know.
All of the geography, all of the geography, all of the geology, it's all messed up and screwed up, and even if they kind of knew where they were, which they probably didn't, it wouldn't have been helpful because it wasn't the same place. So any materials that were in that area before the flood have been moved and redistributed, and now they're out a lot of their resources. You know, so they can't find it as easily. They can still find it, but it does take time to rebuild the civilization from scratch. Especially when you only have 8 people.
Yes, exactly. It's interesting, though, how quickly husbandry comes in. One of the first things Noah does is plant. He plants a vineyard, which leads to an unfortunate story. Which, by the way,
about that in chapter 9,
verse
20, it talks about him planting a vineyard and
what goes on with this. I do want to say, first of all, from anthropological aspect, the fact that they're farming immediately shows an advanced intelligence and culture. Whatever. They've been farming long before this. They weren't stupid. Unfortunately, the choice of crop led to an incident, and I do want to just side note this really quickly. There was the curse of the younger son of Ham, not Ham, his younger son. Cursed be Canaan, not Ham. And you will find that all of the land of Canaan, which is now Israel and the Gaza Strip, which is disputed between the Arabs and Israel, the Canaanites were destroyed. Okay? This was not a curse on people of a darker skin tone. That is total garbage, straight out of hell.
Take that way. Yeah, that's.
Please don't go there.
Nonsense. It's that's the devil trying to bring in misinformation on the Bible. We see this all throughout history. Satan always wants us to misinterpret the Bible and take it out of context and not read what has been written for us.
Right.
And anytime we look at this and you start going off, make sure you read the
whole context.
Story.
Yes.
And not just the one verse or the one line,
Right.
even half a verse. Get it in your head what the entire context is,
Yes.
and then what's going on before and after. Because otherwise, you're going to get a lot of lies, false doctrine, false history, all kinds of things that Satan wants us to learn because it discredits God.
Absolutely.
And it makes him look bad.
And this misconception, unfortunately, brought on, and quite frankly, Darwin didn't help, the idea that the people of the African continent are a subhuman group. That is a lie.
Right.
That is out of hell. And it's not based on any truth. They are as 100% human as I am. We all are a one blood and one race, the human race. There are no separate races in the world. There are separate cultures,
Everybody,
but not races. So be aware of that. That is not what that passage is referring to.
Yeah, everybody in the entire world is descended from Noah through Adam.
Yes.
Or Adam through Noah.
Right.
Bust that up. But we're all descendants of Adam and then Noah.
Yes.
And there's no other thing. There's no aliens. There's no separate races.
No.
Doesn't matter where you live. Doesn't matter what you look like.
We're all human.
There's cultural difference, but there's no racial difference. It's the human race. And that's it.
Right. And that's so important. The curse was not a skin color thing. There's a very high, a high probability that one of Noah's sons or daughter-in-laws had a much darker skin tone. It's all about the melanin in your skin. I'm sure they had a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and I'm sure they had olive tone, and they probably had someone with slanty eyes. All of these characteristics were already built into the human genome, and we're going to talk about that as we talk about the Tower of Babel and the spread. This is going to explain why we have very unique characteristics in certain parts of the world. It has nothing to do with civilization springing up out of nowhere. There's a very good reason for it. We're going to talk about that. But do note that that particular incident in the scripture was not a curse on the African continent or on people with a darker melanin than other people. That's just, Satan has brought that to bring division. I also really quickly want to throw in here, we're not going to get deep into it really. It will play into the dispersion of people, but because of the flood, there was a massive shift in the way the earth worked. The shift brings about the first ice age. So was there an ice age? Absolutely there was, just not when evolutionary religion scientists state it was happening. So yes, there was an ice age. It took place after the flood. And so this is a time of extreme turbulent weather on Earth because we're settling and it takes a long time to settle after something quite so catastrophic as this flood. So yes, there was an ice age. No, it was not millions of years ago. In fact, it probably began about 2347 BC. Just so you know. And it isn't the reason the dinosaurs disappeared. Okay, we'll talk about that too.
No.
But it didn't cover the entire Earth.
Dinosaurs were fully capable of surviving.
Yes. So Yes, ice did cover deep into North America, deep into Europe, and even up into South America as well as Antarctica. Yes, it did.
Yeah, coming up from the
Okay.
south and the north.
So yeah, coming up from the south. Predominantly from the north, but some from the south. Yes, it did. But it wasn't when evolutionary scientists want us to believe it was. Okay, this wasn't that long
Yep.
ago. And yes, the evolutionists will tell you there were multiple ice ages. There were, all in the last 4,000 years. So, ice ages, I love it. Particularly the mini ice age is my very favorite, because this was a great period of history, and that's in the medieval time period. We went through the medieval warm period into the mini ice age, and just that's when Stradivarius made his violins, and just little notes there. But that
Little tidbits.
is a possibility again. One thing we have to understand is the Earth goes through cycles. The main ice age, that big one, didn't happen when evolutionists said 2347 BC, not that long ago, about 4,000 years ago. And it would have lasted for a little while, for sure, because it takes a while to settle the Earth. But an ice age could happen again.
Upheaval.
Yes.
There was massive upheaval during the flood. All the weather, that much rain and that much destruction.
Mhm.
You got volcanoes, earthquakes, tsunamis, all this kind of stuff. It's gonna wreck everything.
Yes.
And the Earth has to bounce back.
It does.
And I think that's also important.
Excuse my
We
cuckoo
talked
clock.
about this
Sorry,
a little
guys.
bit in Dominion.
Love my cuckoo clock.
We talked about this in the Dominion episode, where the Earth, we can't destroy the Earth. The Earth got flooded completely.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was destroyed, and it bounced back. You look at it today,
Yes.
and it's a beautiful, thriving place. And we can look at so many other examples, and won't go into it now. But the Earth always comes back.
Mhm.
But that much destruction is going to take a lot of weirdness.
Yeah.
You know, weather-wise. You get a lot of weird, bizarre storms. You're going to get the Ice Age to kind of help equalize everything and bring it back to the way that it was designed to be. So the Earth is designed to come back. So we don't need to worry about that. Weird tangent, I know, but there it is. But yeah, there's a lot of, and even in this, you know, we see God. There's a lot of good things that came from all of this. The flood, the Ice Age, different things like that. It's a destructive time, yes. But it is also a loving time from God, and that He's providing for us.
Yes.
A lot of stuff. And I think we should always remember that.
That is so true. So true to remember. We're getting into my favorite bits now. We're about to split up into multiple cultures, and I'm so excited about it, because this is where history really takes a fun, twisted turn. And it's where we can finally really get comparison things going on at the same time as biblical, what we see in the Bible and what's going on in other cultures. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to this next bit for so long. I've been waiting to get to it. But 2 takeaways from this today. Please remember, number 1, the flood was real, and there's much evidence for that. And yes, there was an ice age, just not when they said. It was only 4,000 years ago, and it was in direct result of the flood. And also a takeaway, please remember that the curse placed on Ham's grandson, or his younger son, I'm sorry, and not Ham himself, was not a curse of a skin tone color at all. It had nothing to do with it, and in fact, it had nothing to do with the people of Africa at all. And that's just a lie out of hell, this idea that there's subhuman people, and I can't stomach it, and I can't stand it. We are all equal in God's eyes. We're all sinners in need of a Savior, and we are all amazing creations of God. No matter what we are, God made us that way on purpose, and He has a plan. So, looking forward to next week.
Amen. next week we're going to be getting into the Tower of Babel.
So excited!
And the fun stuff
Yes.
going on there. And then the dispersion of humanity and the creation of all the languages, which I love. So we'll get into all that next week. So join us. If you have any questions about any of these things, do feel free to email us at thebibleandhistory@gmail.com. We'd love to try to answer your questions. We'll see you next week.
If you enjoyed today's video, please like and subscribe to our channel.
You can also follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, and Google Podcasts.